Dana, hi.
Hi, did I do it? I
You
was
did
like,
it. I did it. I'm so excited.
yeah, nice to talk to you face to
I,
face.
I know, so exciting. I'm just so happy that you were willing to join me today.
Oh, thank you for asking me. I'm excited that you wanted me to be a part of this.
Oh,
So,
yeah, sure. Well, yeah, I'm just super excited to get started. Do you have any like time constraints today, or just so we can make
uh,
sure?
oh no, I'm here. I brewed extra coffee and I'm just here. So,
Perfect. That is awesome. Okay, so I guess we'll go ahead and get officially started.
cool.
So, yes, so I'm Alanna Peterson, the author of the young adult eco thriller series, The Call of the Crow Quartet, and the first book, When We Vanished, just came out in audiobook, and Dana narrated it beautifully. So I'm just super excited that you're here today with us, Dana, and
Yeah.
um, I've spent a lot of time with your voice over the last few months. so, so
Yeah, I'm sure you're like, whoa. But yeah, it can be a lot just to be immersed in that, and I'm sure from your side as the writer and then listening to your words being transitioned into audio is that weird for you?
it was a little bit, it was an experience. I mean, I was not really prepared for any of it. It's the first time I've ever done an audiobook. And so I was just kind of, let's see what happens, kind of get it started. But I just really didn't have any clue like what went into it, kind of from your like side of things, just
Yeah.
of work and time that it takes to do that. And I mean, that was really cool for me as the author to be able to like hear someone performing my story. It was so cool.
Yeah, I think that's great. And you already have like this is a quartet, right? You already
Yeah,
have all the books written.
I
And
do. Mm-hmm.
that's such an
It
undertaking. I
was. It was huge. So yeah, well, we'll probably talk a little bit more, but I ended up,
Sure.
When We Vanished came out in 2020 in print and ebook, and that was June 2020. So it was, height of pandemic times, really interesting time to be debuting as an author. But
Right.
yeah, in the years since, I have managed to publish all of those books through the little publishing company that I founded, Rootcity Press.
Mhm.
Um, and so this year, or well, in 2022, I was like, I just really want to get an audiobook out there for people who prefer that format, or maybe that's the only format they can, really use. So I just really wanted to do that. And I was just really thrilled to find you through the Find Away Voices marketplace, and would just kind of love to hear about the process from your perspective. How does it work as for the narrator to do this?
Yeah, I think people who aren't in the audiobook world, or maybe have never listened to an audiobook, I encourage you to go and pick one up and see if you like it. But on a narrator side, everyone kind of has their different process, but actually a lot of work goes into it from our side because it's kind of being an actor, it's kind of like once you're in the play and the script and the director and the actors take over to that, it's your own creative thing, it's your manuscript. But a lot of times when you pick up a book as a narrator, you read it actually maybe 3 times through. So you're reading it just to read it, to know the story, and then you have to prep the book as well. So as you read the book, I have an Excel spreadsheet and I'm taking notes of characters, ages, like different words that might describe them. And then like I'm color coding them as well, because then I'm putting a document together in PDF. I use an application called I Annotate. So then that's what I'm reading it off of as I'm narrating.
Huh.
And I have to mark up the book, and I color code all the dialogue in different colors, so then I know who's coming to talk when. I'm underlining how they're saying things. So you might say like, oh, she says empathetically, or she says angrily. I love you, you know, so you kind of hit those notes. I'm circling words that I have no idea how to pronounce, or just checking pronunciation, or maybe questions that I might have or something. And I'm just making notes about who's relating to what or where, and things like that. And, you know, you have to kind of prep it, prep the book to know where the story's going. And at the same time, when you're narrating, just like with acting, you can't really know. You have to be in the moment as you're narrating it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like, I mean, with, you know, when we vanished, it definitely felt like I was kind of there with the characters, which was cool. I mean, of course, I wrote this book and I've read it like a million times, but
Right.
it was cool to like experience it from a new like perspective, kind of. And yeah, I just could really feel that like you were getting kind of caught up in it, and that was just
Yeah.
really exciting to me.
Yeah. And sometimes it's hard too, especially like for this one, you know, I was alone in my booth. You're half in my booth right now, everyone. So like my booth is like hanging on ceiling tracks, and I just kind of cocoon myself in
Mhm.
here. But you know, I'm by myself in the booth, and then, you know, I'm kind of like doing what we call in the audiobook world like a punch and roll edit, before I send it off to an editor. And sometimes, you know, you get caught up in the emotion or something in it. Like I've narrated some books where I'm like, oh, like it's emotional, but like I can't cry, because if I'm crying, then I have bad audio, like the audio is bad, or I like mess up words and I'm flubbing. And I have that. And there was a couple times in here, you know, like with one of the main characters, Andy, you know, she's going through a lot with her father, and she's trying to literally save his life. Spoiler, that's not a spoiler, but um, you know, and she's really like in her head, I think, sometimes, and just being caught up in that. And I'm like, oh, you know, you have to go back and you have to fix any pronunciation mistakes, you know, as you can
Mhm.
in live. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah. That must be, I mean, I feel like the sound editing step feels pretty intensive, or just more than I had expected. So
yeah, you know, and you know, having good people on your, if you're outsourcing, it's great. And then you know, there's a few different ways that narrators deliver their files, and also making sure you have clean audio. Like sometimes you have to take a break. Like I'm lucky I live in a fairly quiet neighborhood, but then like everyone's doing yard work on the same day, and you just have to like, you're in like a really good spot, and you're like, oh, I guess I have to stop
uh,
now for half an hour because everyone wants to blow their leaves right now.
right. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds challenging for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so what about you? So you come from a scientific background, and
Mhm.
you 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 can see what I mean is read and hear in the book that you infused your scientific background with food into something creative. So when did that happen for you?
Yeah. Well, this book has been like a project since 2012 is when I started working on it. So that was a long time ago. But when I guess, you know, when I was a kid, I really loved just writing a bunch of weird stories, or just, you know,
Right.
coming up with a lot of stuff. That was kind of when I was younger, like a big thing that I thought maybe I would want to do. And when I first went into college, I started as an English major.
Mm-hmm.
And then I took a psychology class, and I just got super interested in psychology. And then, as part of my psychology major, I took a physiological psychology class, and that really got me like interested in the brain and neuroscience, and was like, I think I really want to go deeper into this and figure out how this all works at like a really molecular level. So I ended up majoring finally after switching a few times in cell and molecular biology, and I worked in a microbiology lab as an undergrad doing research, and I really loved it. And but I knew that I didn't really want to be in that world forever. So when it came time for grad school, I ended up going to a nutrition program because I also loved food and thought like food and science, that would be the perfect to marry these things, you know. And it was awesome, but it was also very sciencey and not so much with like food or culinary type stuff. And when I graduated, I did a lot of writing that was kind of nonfiction, you know. It's like, learn about vitamin D, here's how you can get vitamin D, you know. And then I just got a little bit bored of that. I did blog for a while, but there was a time in 2012 I was like kind of stuck at home with two young kids and was going like a little bit crazy because I was just kind of in my head all the time, and just kind of started thinking like, what if I wrote a book, not like a nonfiction book, but like a fiction, like what if I wrote a novel, which is something I'd always wanted to do. And I started getting this idea for like a story about a girl whose dad goes missing and she has to find him. So it's very basic, you know, like kind of things bubbling up. But then I thought, well, maybe I could kind of work in like this whole like nutrition and science background and have him like go, you know, participate in this clinical trial that kind of went awry. And that just really snowballed from there into like a sprawling series. But yeah, that's kind of like where the little seed started back then. But I just really loved that aspect of it, being able to, you know, work in some of those little sciencey things along with the, you know, more like really thinking about plot and character and all that craft stuff that you have to think about for novels. So it was really a good way to spend my days, is like, you know, thinking about the plot instead of just, you know, kind of twiddling my thumbs trying to think of something that wasn't too, you know, off the wall. So anyway, yeah, that was where it all started.
Well, that's great. And I think you know, you have to write about what you know, and then I think at the heart of the book there's a really good message because, you know, we live in a very fast-paced day and age, and I think sometimes eating and cooking becomes a thing of convenience. And I really loved in the book about, you know, preparing meals and just even a little bit of food prep, how you could get that instead of just, you know, popping a handful of processed things. And that's, you know, I try to make everything from scratch, sometimes to my detriment when I'm cooking, because I'm like, I can make it all from scratch. And then like 5 hours later, I'm like, oh, shoot. So I really appreciated that kind of message in the book. I wanted to talk to you about, because it's really important to me in my creative work as an actor, and also I'm a producer as well. I want to talk about your characters and the diversity of your characters in this book. Was that a conscious thing for you to write that in? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I love this question. I'm glad you brought it up. So yeah, so when I started writing the book back in 2012, you know, I was I guess I'll kind of back up and say that, you know, I grew up in being exposed to media, books and TV shows and movies where it was like a very colorblind sort of, you know, ethic or whatever. It's like, race isn't an issue. Look at this white protagonist. They have a black best friend. They never talk about race because there's nothing to talk about, you know. It's all, we're all good here, you know. And I definitely, you know, internalized that. And as I started working on the book, like initially, race wasn't really something that I thought of beyond kind of this whole like notion that, you know, people could, if I didn't say what race the character was, then people could just decide to make them whatever race they wanted, you know, but that's really not how it works. So I just didn't really have to, as a white writer, that was something initially that I didn't grapple with. But, you know, throughout the time that I was working on it, like the Black Lives Matter movement got started, the We Need Diverse Books movement, which was really kind of pivotal in shifting my mindset. And I just realized like, wow, I need to really think about this. And as a for my process, I guess it's very intuitive in some ways. Like I kind of feel like I'm uncovering a story or kind of tapping into something that already exists instead of just kind of making it up out of my own head. But, that being said, it's like I do have conscious control over
Yeah.
it, and I have to go that step of actually thinking through what I put on the page and what that means in like a larger kind of context and what messages it's really sending. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that was something that like I really had to stop and think about and really ask myself, what race are these characters? And over time, it kind of became clearer to me, like Andy, who we've talked about a little bit, her mom is Taiwanese American and her dad's white. The other three main characters are all siblings and their parents are Iranian American. And that just like when I kind of realized that it felt right, but I really did not take that decision lightly
Hmm.
because I knew that as a white writer, I have a lot of potential to do a lot of harm in terms of reinforcing stereotypes or just kind of doing that whole colorblind thing where it's like, oh, we say that they're Iranian American, but you can't tell them from a white family,
Right.
they're just, they have different names, but whatever. So I
Right.
really wanted to go deeper. And I think I did a lot of research, of course, to come, like did a lot of cooking, which was the fun research,
Yeah.
trying to do, figure out, it's like, I think you can learn a lot about a culture through its food, obviously.
Hmm.
Also learning languages, doing lots of reading and watching movies and all sorts of stuff. And that was really a fun piece of it. But the most important and the hardest part was really grappling with my own like internal biases and unlearning a lot of what I had been raised on. And I, had sensitivity readers that gave me feedback, which I think was a really important part of the process because then, they did point out some missteps and help me see things like from a different, like from a deeper perspective, I guess, where,
Yeah.
the race of the characters does really matter in the way that other people treat them or other institutions treat them. And that kind of influences their whole worldview or just, what happens to them in the story to some extent. So anyway, that was a really big, like I put a ton of thought into that for this. And, of course it was like scary as a white person to do this, but I think it's really the only like you just have to do that in order to like grow as a person and to really um, do justice to the characters that you're trying to tell their story. So
Yeah.
I guess that's where I come from with that.
Yeah. I think that I love hearing how thoughtful you were in putting these characters in there, and also um, just this book is set in Seattle and the greater Seattle area, and Seattle is a very diverse metropolitan area, and so yes, why wouldn't you bring together different races? These people coexist in this metropolitan area
Yeah.
in real life. So I think reflecting that back
Yeah.
in a book also makes it ring true. Um, so I appreciated that, and just being able to read that as a narrator. And
Yeah.
I learned other things too as I was reading and learning about, like Cyrus's and Naveed and Roya's family through food, as well as a Iranian American family and all of that. So that was fun, and I was like, oh, this is very interesting, and I wanted to be at their family table, eating food as well.
Me too.
Yeah.
What's dinner?
Yeah, like and I also love that the middle brother is the one that really kind of cooks and brings people together, and that he's found his little, niche in the
Mhm.
kitchen as the middle sibling,
Yeah.
cooking.
Yeah.
So I think that's really sweet as a person that really believes that coming around a table and eating together, you can really learn a lot about people.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was important to me. And I know that, we live in such a a world where it's really hard to make time to do that, and a lot of people, don't really especially enjoy cooking.
Yeah.
So there are characters in the book who are just kind of, they're just like eat to live people, but then there's the live to eat people, and I just really enjoy writing them.
Yeah, I'm all about eating, like my tag thing for myself as an eater, feeder, and creator.
Nice.
So I have some friends on here who I love to bake and cook for people, and I think yeah, as my husband says, I don't know how to cook for one or two. I don't know how that works. I don't understand that concept. So I appreciated that part.
Yeah, and I mean that's part of what drew me to you as a narrator too, because I got
Cool.
and I was like, oh, she's a foodie.
Yeah.
You might.
Yeah. I just want to eat.
Yeah.
And having this book that was set in Seattle, I had traveled there in September, so it was like recent.
Yeah.
And then I started prepping this book, and so it was really great to narrate this book from a place that I really loved visiting, and I could see myself living there. And we had actually already been talking about it. So, and I made a conscious choice. I mean, this is how I travel. I made a conscious choice, and I had a food itinerary as I traveled through Seattle. So I was like eating all over the place, but it was cool to also see them travel to places that I kind of touched upon, and I could, yeah, I think Andy and her mom go for a walk or a run.
Yep.
And I went through for a run in that park, and I was like, I know where they're at. So I was like, yeah. So yeah. So I was like, oh, this is great. And then, of course, you touch like it's not huge in the book because I think everyone thinks about like Pike's Place and Pike's Market, but they're in and around there. Sorry, that was loud. And I was just like, I know that place because I ate like. I had a chowder flight all by myself at a table in Pike's Place.
Awesome.
Yeah, everyone was like, can I sit here? I was like, are you waiting for someone? I was like, no, this is all just my food. So please go ahead and sit down. So
yes,
yeah.
well, that's also extra authentic, right?
Yeah, extra authentic.
Yeah.
One question I wanted to ask, because you talk about food, but you also talk about food sustainability, which I am just trying to find more ways to be sustainable in my life in general, where that comes from work-life balance, electronics, recycling, upcycling clothes, all of that. But I wanted to ask, is there one thing people would be surprised to learn about food sustainability from your perspective as someone who's in and around this world?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know that this is particularly helpful or surprising or whatever. But, when I was thinking about this question, I feel like a lot of the conversation around like food sustainability tends to focus on individual choices, individual diets, things we can do, what to eat. That's kind of, it's very tangible, it's very understandable, but I do think that there does need to be a little bit more focus on like the actual humans who are like bringing us our food. So whether it's like growers, people who harvest and slaughter and process and package, transport, sell it to us in grocery stores and cook it for us in restaurants, I feel like that's kind of a piece of the conversation that's super important, because all of those industries just have very deeply unsustainable practices in terms of how they treat their workers and just how they treat the environment in general. And so that's kind of, what came to mind when I think about like something that maybe is not talked about enough. But, in terms of like dietary choices, cooking your food is awesome. Buying direct from farmers is kind of all the standard stuff, eating more plant-based stuff. But also I do feel like that can be a little alienating to people who are just like trying to get food on the table at all.
Yeah.
So I guess like in general, I feel like there just needs to be a little bit more focus on our systems and the institutions and like all of the machinery that goes on
Yeah.
to if we really want to have a more sustainable system. And there's a lot of great work being done by like food sovereignty and food justice organizations that are really trying to lift up the voices of like peasant farmers and people who are actually like on the ground getting us food to
Yeah.
eat. So yeah, I don't know that that's helpful at all, but
No, I think that is because people don't know. And yes, I do cook once, eat 3 times, 6 times a day. So, um, I wanted to ask too, because I'm always interested, if there's one person you could share a meal with, living or dead, who would it be?
well, that was such a hard question. I'm really glad you sent it to me ahead of time because
Yeah.
I had to think about it. But you know what? I think my choice, if I had to choose one, would be Robin Wall Kimmerer,
Okay.
who is the author of Braiding
Okay.
Sweetgrass. It is yeah. So she there's actually a YA version of that
Okay.
that just only came out.
Writing it down right now. Okay.
Braiding Sweetgrass. So she's a botanist and also just her she's an enrolled member of the Potawatomi Nation,
Mhm.
and so she definitely comes at it from a very different perspective than a lot of scientists do. It's very
Right.
rooted in her indigenous worldview, and um, I've come to a place in my like day job career. I still like work in the research world. These books are my other you know side, so to speak. I mean, and so I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm trying to figure out how to bring in like my more like creative and spiritual side to the scientific work that I do. And like that book, Braiding Sweetgrass, is all about
Mhm.
this focus on plants and
Mhm.
her relationship with plants and how that influences the way that she does science. And I would just love to sit down for a meal with her and talk to her about like what does that really look like being part of the scientific establishment and having that kind of that worldview that a lot of scientists kind of maybe look down on,
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
more spiritual side. So I would just, yeah, really love to talk to her about that. And the book is amazing. It's just beautiful essays all about nature and food.
Oh, that sounds great. Well, I'm glad I'm gonna put it on my to read
Yeah.
list.
Yeah.
Um, so when's the second book of the quartet? When do you foresee are those available now, the full quartet, or
Yeah. So the whole quartet is available in print and ebook. And maybe someday, if the first audiobook sells well, able to make more audiobooks. And I'd love to have Dana back to do the narration on that. So hopefully that will work out. It's still just started launching this When We Vanished one. And since it's a series that really builds on itself, it really can benefit from, uh, it's like you kind of have to start with the first one.
yeah.
You can't really hop into the middle. So, so yeah. So I guess one thing I wanted to ask you, Dana, was what
Mhm.
was your favorite part of narrating When We Vanished?
Oh, that's really hard. I think like well, we talked about it. I know Roya is so great.
Yeah.
Someone just so she was really fun to narrate. Like Roya's great in her own journey. And but what I really liked being with the characters, like I said, in all over Seattle in this way, and then also learning about them coming together and eating and like sharing food. So, but yeah, I think Roya is a great character because she's 8 in this book,
Mm-hmm.
and she's so spicy.
Yeah.
And she has like she's so empathetic as well,
Mm-hmm.
and she like is so fierce in this 8-year-old way.
Yeah.
That she was one of my favorite things about the book. I really loved different ways you had with, because these are all adolescents. I mean, Roya's,
Yeah.
8,
Yeah.
but especially with Andy, how they're relating to the world and others, and maybe crushes, not crushes, but also relating to the world with adults, and then also navigating the world as POCs, I think is really important too. And I could, I thought a lot of that was really authentic because that's my own. That's what's running in my head all the
Yeah.
time as I navigate the world, and I've navigated the world largely a lot in white spaces.
Mhm.
So it's like, an undercurrent of thought.
Yeah.
So that was like, I really enjoyed that. Felt to me something that was thoughtful and intentional.
Oh, thanks. Well, that's
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah, yeah,
clear.
yeah. So
But
I appreciated that.
mhm. It was, yeah, I just had I don't know, going into Andy's head is always, there's, yeah, 4 books of, her growth. And so it's just, yeah, I feel like well, I love all the characters, but
Great.
yeah, I do, I don't know, feel kind of a kinship with her on just like a basic, like soul level,
Yeah,
of all the
yeah,
experiences she has. But yeah,
yeah,
it's like I get
yeah. And she relates to the world through music, and
her. Hmm.
I think that's really great too, because I have specific songs in my life that, I think like many people like transport me back to that time, or, when you're hearing something, or she's like, I just need something loud and angry right now. So I totally relate to that.
Yeah. Yeah, music was a big part of my teen years. And I mean, still, it continues, but that was just like, I just spent, tons of time listening to music and following the artists I loved. And yeah, I was never a musician per se, but always just appreciated listening to it. And it's just such a good outlet.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
work that in too.
So how can people find the quartet of these books, When We Vanished
Mhm.
and the three after? How can people listen?
Yeah, thanks
Yeah.
for you're a good yeah, promoter here. So yeah, so let's see. I for the quartet as a whole, well, 4 books are back there on my bookshelf.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so you can buy them in print or ebook at your favorite retailers by searching the title. Um, Same with the audiobook, just search When We Vanished. It's available widely, so you should be able to find it wherever you like to listen to audiobooks. You can go to my website, alannapeterson.com, and that has lots of information about all the books. It also has tons of resources that I've put together. So there's like, lists of food justice and food sovereignty organizations that I've kind of um, collected over the years. There's tons of blog posts like back behind the scenes kinds of stuff, and recipes, all sorts of things. So that's a good one-stop shop. And that will give you buy links to all the books as well. So that's a good place to start. But yeah, definitely if you're at all into audiobooks, you should check this one out because I feel like I went on quite the journey listening to it. And I wrote the thing, but I was just like, oh my gosh, what's gonna it was just so like intense sometimes towards the end. It's very like edge of your seat. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's kind of
especially with Naveed. So if you haven't read or listened to it, Naveed
yeah.
goes on quite a journey,
Oh my
everybody.
gosh, yeah. But especially him, it's like it's pretty intense, pretty
Yeah,
dark sometimes.
yeah,
But I felt like that was important to kind of, obviously, as I mentioned, I do have a lot of interest in psychology, and I wanted to kind of do justice, when people face like really hard circumstances or like violence, whether it's physical or psychological. It's just I think it's important to follow that through and like really try hard to um, not just gloss over it or be like, oh, he's fine now.
right.
It's just kind of, yeah, part of the whole series is following his journey as, you know, he goes on, and all of their journeys as they have gone through the events of the first book and what that means to them. So
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I have not read the next three books, but it'll be interesting to see how this this experience really kind of keeps them
yeah.
going.
Yeah.
Um,
You know, it's one of those things, like we all go through those kinds of experiences. Hopefully not as intense or, you know,
yeah.
over the top as they go through. But you know, I think for teenagers in particular, they really have it's a tough world to be existing in right now
Mhm.
and to grow up in. And so just, you know, having books that kind of reflect that, or just get into some of the really tough stuff that you have to deal with as a human in this world.
Yeah, and that's why I like going back to like Cyrus's kind of journey too,
Mhm.
feeling, I don't know if it's, you know, being the middle child, having this, you know, being close to your brothers and sisters, but then also feeling like you're the one that not seen in your family. You know, I think that was, I think a lot of people can also relate to that. I mean, regardless if you're the middle child or not, but
Mhm.
I like his kind of journey as he is going through that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's kind of the hope is that, you know, they can kind of, they grow through this journey and are able to kind of see where they fit in, you know. It's like
Mhm, mhm.
understand their little superpowers or their talents, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. I think that's important for young people nowadays to understand, you know, within themselves where they can have, I guess, a safe space, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I like that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they definitely go on so many twists, journeys,
Twists and turns.
yeah, ups and downs, and just roller coasters everywhere. So,
I love that.
but it was, yeah, a really fun. I just had, I mean, it was hard, but it was also really fun to follow them, like all the way through to what felt like the natural conclusion of their you know whole this whole arc that this book sets them on. So yeah, if you've read the first one, I highly recommend checking out the rest of the series, because I feel like the first one it's good, but it's like it really starts picking up in the second book. In my
It sets it up. It sets it up. And this is the Call of the
yeah,
Crow Quartet,
yeah,
right? Okay,
correct. Yeah.
great. So,
Yeah, starting with When We Vanished. I'll show the pretty book again. Yeah, so um, yeah, what else are you working on right now, Dana? I'm curious.
yeah, I have a book coming out for Harper, one of, you know, the big five publishers. They have an imprint. It's solely dedicated to AAPI stories, Alita books. So you can check out their inaugural book. I'm one of the voices in it. And it's called You Are Here Connecting Flights. And I think I have a book by Susan Tan that's coming out soon. It's called Ghosts, Toasts, and Other Hazards. And there is this coming of age story with that. I've been doing a lot of YA middle grade narration. On not in the audiobook world, I am pitching a docu-series about first generation Americans, such as
Cool.
myself. So that's been largely developed during the pandemic,
Mhm.
and hopefully we'll find that available soon somewhere. So fingers crossed
Ah,
that we will be able to see that. It's a lot about my own journey, but also what it looks like to be American.
yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
that's what I'm working on.
well, I will be watching for that, and I'll be sure to let people know once that, you know, finds its way out there.
Yeah, and it's called Othered, and so, you know, you can DM me or whatever if your own stories of being othered. I've interviewed a lot of strangers in this process, and
Mm.
referrals from people just to make sure I developed it correctly. So right now we're just in the pitching phase, and that's what's going. Yeah.
Oh, that's so
Thanks,
exciting. Yeah,
Jen.
that's tough. I mean, as a writer, I definitely went through a pitching phase. I tried to sell the books to, fictional publishers, and that was really hard. So I can't even imagine like how it would be as, like pitching a kind of a really personal, like docu-series kind of,
Yeah, it's, the industry, when I'm saying industry with a capital I, in film and TV and everything is, it's very much its own beast. People don't see, all the things. I think there's a lot of content out there that kind of showcases like the behind the scenes of the industry, and there's so many ins and outs. And now it's also, there's so many different vehicles and platforms for content too. So just finding the right place for yourself as well. And I have a couple of feature films out, so be on the lookout for on May 12th, I believe, Robert Rodriguez's new film, Hypnotic, starring Ben Affleck and Alicia Braga, is coming out. It just had a work in progress screening at South by, which I was able to attend, and you might see a face on there that you might know. And an indie film called On Fire had its world premiere at the Mammoth Film Festival, and a really good reception. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it to that, but look out for that somewhere. I haven't seen it yet, but it got nominated for some awards. So
awesome.
Yeah, so there's some stuff there. Yeah.
You've got going on. That's so great.
Yeah, I mean, like I filmed this thing like, a year ago.
Oh yeah.
I wonder where it's at, but it's happening. And especially for Hypnotic, if you like twists and turns of things, you'll like this. It's really great, and also should be inspiring to all artists out there making art where you're at, because this was all entirely filmed in Austin at Troublemaker Studios with Robert Rodriguez. So you can make art from where you're at. You can write about Seattle, and because you're from there and you live there, and so yeah,
I definitely all about it's like I feel, especially like throughout and after post-pandemic or wherever we're at now, just art feels like so important, and so it's just so cool to see people pushing through all the constraints of what the pandemic brought to us, and still doing it, making art, making just amazing things. So
someone at the Q&A for Hypnotic was like, I shot a whole movie in my bedroom for $300, because Robert Rodriguez was like a idol to them, just to be able to do that and find a way and just be creative in that. So yeah, I agree. Seattle does feel like a really cool character. Like I said, I loved that city. So
come on back. Well,
I know. You might see me there eating oysters at a place near you. But it was a beautiful city, and it was just great, and like walking around, and it felt like I really loved, there's some side characters in it that also like do a lot of farmers markets, but that was like the vibe that I was getting from Seattle as well. So yeah.
It's a pretty awesome place.
Flights of clam chowder, yes, Emily. I ate so much chowder that day. It was so great.
That's so awesome.
So if anyone ever wants to eat with me, just let me know. I'm always down to share a meal.
Same here. This was awesome. So thank you so much for agreeing to chat with me today.
Thank you. It's so great, because a lot of times I don't get to meet the authors or talk with them, so it's really nice to get to know you more. And congratulations on not just one book, but 4 books. 4 books. That's crazy.
I know. It is kind of crazy, but I'm just thrilled to have all 4 out there now. It just feels so like just such a good feeling to have the quartet complete. And again, it's like I really hope that we can get more audiobooks made, and I just have to thank you so much, Dana, for putting so much into this. I feel like it really added like a lot of emotional depth to this story, which was just so cool to hear and experience. So,
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. And yeah, if you know, audiobooks are a good alternative if you just
yeah,
feel like you can't read anything or you don't have time, you know, you can do it on your commutes, on your
right.
walks, wherever. So, everybody just
Check it
listen to
out.
audiobooks, read.
We vanished at your favorite audiobook retailer and
Yeah,
number.
I pretend I can play the ook. I started learning, but I haven't re-picked it up. I think I can play 3 chords. I know that someone related in the Rootcity press sphere plays a lot of
Yeah,
ukulele, so
that was Brett. He's
that is Brett.
the,
I've seen that
the
one.
resident, yeah, ukulele
Yeah,
musician in the household, which is awesome. But yeah, I did see that too on your play. I was like, oh, well,
yeah.
this sweetens the deal. Someone,
I'm learning. I'm learning. It's been hard. I can't play. I tried to pick up the guitar once and that just did not work with my hands. I did not understand it.
yeah.
You know, I played the violin through high school and things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
every once in a while I'll sit back down at the piano, but I'm not a musician by any
Oh,
means. I just like I'm one of those people that needs like music. Someone needs to tell me what to do. I
yeah.
can't just like jam. I wish I could be that. But
Around that, you're still a musician if you play any music in my mind.
I
So.
guess, I guess. I'm more I'm obsessed with I play a lot of pickleball now.
Oh,
I'm one of those people which was founded in Bainbridge Island, right outside of Seattle in
yeah.
1964. Um,
I know you'd think we'd have more like pickleball going on in Seattle, but I don't know. I'm sure it's coming. It's just
yeah, when I was there and I like took the ferry and they're like, to your left, you'll see Bainbridge Island. I was like, home of pickleball. Like that's how I play too much. But
great though.
so if you want to write that into one of your next books,
Yeah,
and
you know, I need to start. I need to get bit by the bug, and then I'll be all about it.
well, I'll be happy to play with pickleball when I come visit. All the things.
Totally, share a meal for sure. Next time you're in Seattle, make sure you.
Okay, that would be great. Cherry turnovers
Yes,
and
got
pickleball.
it. Yeah, perfect.
Awesome.
Okay, well, again, Dana, thanks everyone who joined. It was just so awesome to have you here, and yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Tomorrow's the first day of spring, so
Oh, happy
happy
spring,
spring and
everybody.
happy Nowruz to any Iranian Americans who are
Oh, I
for
love
a
that.
very special holiday time. So, yes, just thanks again, and I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
great. Happy reading, happy listening, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.